Good day, Strathmore. I'm Councillor Jason Montgomery. Welcome to my post-council meeting rundown from March 17, 2021. Today's council meeting, we started off with a presentation from Mr. Scott Silva, who's with the Lakewood Development Group. Mr. Scott Silva came to council to present the idea of this new park and playground area that they will be developing in the Lakewood development area. The Lakewood area is on the northwest corner of town, just kind of west of Hillview, essentially. And the idea for the park and playground, I'll show you some graphics right now that were presented to council to give you an idea of, what the area could look like and what the theme behind the park is. As you can see, the theme is, basically to honor, brave people and so it might be first responders or other people that take risks for the community and make sacrifices for the community to, help us. Live better lives, essentially, and to be there for the people in the community. It's a great idea to honor these people, and I support the concept for sure. I did make a motion to receive the presentation for information and to direct administration to bring back more information on the funding side. Following that, we had a presentation from Mr. Jeff Person, who had invited several members of the community to come and give a presentation about the prohibited business bylaw. So this part was just public feedback, essentially, and as I said, we had 3 people come in and give presentations about their perspectives or their views about the prohibited business bylaw, which you should be able to find on the town website. I also want to thank the other people that either wrote to the town or contacted the town through some other means, even through the survey that the town provided, to give their feedback about this prohibited business bylaw. It's very important that the public give feedback on these types of things, and so I just want to say thank you very much to those people that took the time to do that. And then following that, we had a presentation from Mr. Paul Salvatore, who was there to present the acting detachment commander for the RCMP, Mr. Sergeant Salmon. And this had to do with just giving the police or the RCMP their kind of priorities for this upcoming year. Every year, council gives the RCMP a letter with some priorities that they would like the RCMP to focus on. And so this year, council did the same. There was some recommendations made by Sergeant Salmon for things that the town might want to look at recommending, and these included reducing property crime, traffic law enforcement, application of the crime reduction strategy, police presence and visibility, and then community engagement. And then also the priorities that council had suggested was response to the opioid crisis, communication, the tripart agreement between Siksika, the town, and the RCMP, which is ongoing. And then there's youth engagement and positive policing, and then joint initiatives between the groups. So council did move to approve the letter with those priorities. So those will be the police priorities in the upcoming year, and those priorities can be modified throughout the year if there's some sort of an issue that springs up. Then council should be able to adapt to that and then make recommendations to the RCMP. Something I found interesting was that the Strathmore RCMP detachment, their territory that they're responsible for, runs all the way from the Bow River in the south all the way up to McKnight, or Highway 564 in the north, and then from Stony Trail on the east side of Calgary all the way out to Rockyford. So it's a huge area that this detachment is responsible for, and that's quite a task, essentially, to police that large of an area with the number of members that they have. And following that, there was a brief discussion about an ongoing initiative that the town and Wheatland County and Rocky County have been working on, and that is the provision for administrative support for the RCMP. So previously, constables, they would spend some of their time, doing actual police work where they're out actually, interfering with crimes, let's say, or responding to crime, and then they would have to spend some of their time actually doing the administrative side, so writing reports. And you can imagine the amount of report writing that would go along with every incident that comes along. And so the town and the counties, they work together to create these positions where we essentially provide administrative support to the RCMP. And that funding comes from the municipalities, and so that basically makes it so that rather than somebody or a constable spending a bunch of time sitting at their desk, writing reports. They're able to actually now be out fully in the community responding to crime. And so it's a good way to make better use of the money that, we're spending on the officers themselves, their highest and best use, let's say. So what this has resulted in is Wheatland County has asked the town to support a letter to go to the province, asking the province to help with the funding of those positions. I support any sort of outside money that we can bring in to help pay for things, and so I supported the idea of doing this, and council also supported the idea of collaborating with the county to produce a letter to send to the province asking for support with those administrative costs. Following that, we had a presentation from the Happy Cat Society, just to do with in 2017, I believe it was, the Happy Cat came to council with the idea of council helping to fund some of the operations of the Happy Cat Society and to help them pay for, essentially a home base for them to operate out of. And at the time, it was presented in the way that, I supported it, because the way it was presented was, we gave essentially, or we agreed to give the Happy Cat $33,000 per year. And we were told by administration at the time that the town would have to spend well over that to deal with the feral cat and just stray cat problem that would be prevalent if the Happy Cat was not operating and basically, helping to process those stray and feral cats. So currently what happens is if there's a stray cat or a feral cat found, it's brought, first of all, it might be brought to the town, but the town then gives it to the Happy Cat, and then the Happy Cat provides for, it could be, vet care, which they have arrangements with local vets to get discounted rates. And then what they do is they turn around and they get the proper vet care, and then they're able to adopt these cats out and recoup some of the cost for the processing of the cats. Basically the idea is that if they were not doing that, then the town would have to have a bylaw officer almost working full time to go and get the cats, and then to help process them, maybe store them in the impound for a bit. Or is it the pound? I don't think we're impounding cats anyways, but and then they apparently what they would have to do is they would have to drive those cats to Calgary to the Humane Society to be something done with them anyways. And you can imagine as over the course of the year, if they had to do that with a couple hundred or few hundred cats, which apparently it sounds like that is the case, that would quickly add up to well more than the $33,000 that we were spending. And so they did come and they had asked, they're kind of changing the way that they do things, and so they had come and they asked for an increase up to $48,000 per year. Council ended up voting against that, and then there was a motion put forward to give them less money than that, still more. I was the one that made the motion actually, and basically what I did was I took the $33,000 that they've been getting. I added on 2.5% for basically inflation, to help them with inflated costs, and so then the new motion that came forward was to give them 1 year funding in the amount of $36,500, which it's less than what they wanted or what they felt they needed, but it's more than what they were getting. And then the other thing that the other idea that I had suggested a few years ago actually that was that. Administration could, when people come in to renew cat licenses, they could ask those people at that time if they'd be willing to make a donation to the Happy Cat. Like the idea being, who would want to, help, the Happy Cat Society more than a cat owner, essentially, right? And it turned out, though, that apparently administration had not acted on that request or that suggestion at all. And so no money over the past few years had actually been collected and then given to the Happy Cat. So I will be bringing a motion forward at the next meeting to basically direct administration to start asking people for donations and then giving those donations to the Happy Cat to help cover the cost of their operation. Following that, we had a presentation from Mr. Mark Pretzlaff just to do with the extending the lease for the Happy Gang The Happy Gang currently operates out of the south side of the library building, and they're a group of seniors that it's basically a social club where any senior can join, and they have kind of different social gatherings going on there. They did have a 5-year lease that will be coming up due soon. So rather than, and so there was a motion put forward to just basically renew the lease as it is, and that motion was defeated because most of council felt that the terms of the lease, because it's 5 years old, the terms of the lease should be looked at, and then if there's any sort of suggestions or maybe improvements that could be made to the lease, that those be looked at before we enter into another agreement, essentially. There was a motion made to have administration enter into negotiations with the Happy Gang for a new lease agreement, and so administration will be working on that soon. Following that, we had a presentation from Mr. Paul Salvatore, who's with the town, with Community Services, and this was to do with the policy number 7205, which has to do with the recreational use of Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes and other storm ponds in town. Essentially, this policy would prohibit the use of all storm ponds in town except for Kinsman and Strathmore Lakes. And I ended up voting against this, actually, because for one, I felt that prohibiting use of all storm ponds in town was not necessarily reasonable. I didn't see, in the past, I've seen people, go out onto, the wetlands at Grays Park in the winter and, clear off a little spot on the, on that ice surface there, and then, use it for skating, etc. And I think that, where possible, that, the residents of Strathmore should be allowed to make use of these surfaces. And then there was other issues I found in the policy itself. I'm not a big fan of what I feel are kind of arbitrary, guidelines or arbitrary, prohibitions, let's say. So, in this case, they were allowing for the use of canoes, for instance, but then they were prohibiting the use of kayaks. Or, they were saying you can use a canoe, but or you can use a paddle boat even, because what they wanted to do is they wanted to prevent people from, using, using the water or using the lakes in a way where they would come into contact with the water, because it's quite dirty, it's basically just runoff from the streets. But, I think it's arbitrary to me to say that, somebody can, use a canoe and they can't use a kayak, for instance. And so I ended up not supporting it for those reasons. I thought that there was just ways that they could have improved it. Following that, we had a presentation again, I think, this is from Ethan Wilson with the Infrastructure Department, and this just had to do with the heavy item garbage, or HIG, service or program that the town currently offers. So currently the HIG is 5 times per year, and administration has reviewed the program and they proposed a revised HIG program that essentially will be cutting it down from 5 occasions to 2 occasions per year. I can understand wanting to reduce it to save costs, but I felt that 2 was too few. And then the other issue too is it doesn't necessarily solve a lot of problems, or it doesn't save costs necessarily, because a lot of the cost has to do with the disposal, like the tonnage that they're disposing of, and there's no guarantee that the tonnage will be reduced by simply reducing the days. Some money will be saved by by doing it less frequently, I presume. But then there's other costs, I guess, that can be incurred, and this is something that I find very interesting always, is just the unintended consequences from government decisions. And I'll give you an example. So when we say, okay, we're going to pick up HIG less often, what that might force people to do, and I'm not saying it'll force them, but what that might cause people to do is to do illegal dumping. So if somebody has to dispose of a mattress or a couch, normally they would just maybe have to wait a couple months or something like that, to dispose of that, whereas now they might have to wait 6 months or longer, and so. And then what that results in essentially is, people will go out and just dump this stuff, on the side of the road somewhere, and then the town will have to, expend money in order to, clean that up and then dispose of it themselves. So, these ideas, they sound good, up front, but that doesn't mean that they're not without, possible negative consequences. And as I said, I felt 2 was too few. I would have rather went with 3 or 4, and so I voted against that as well. But council did pass it, actually. And then next we had a presentation from Jeff Person with regards to the proclamation of International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Council ended up passing this. It's always a good idea to do what we can to recognize, efforts to eliminate racial discrimination. And I wholeheartedly support that. And next, we had a motion that was brought forward by Mayor Fuel, and this had to do with fiber optics in Strathmore. And so the motion was that council direct administration to draft a report regarding the possibility of installation of fiber optic internet for Strathmore residents. I like this idea because, as a lot of people know, we're moving towards more of a digital economy and a digital world, and internet connectivity is very important to businesses and to people. And from what I understand, there are businesses that will look at internet connectivity when they are looking at a community to set up shop in. And so we could potentially do ourselves damage by not trying to stay on the forefront of these technology changes. And so in order to help Strathmore's economy be as strong as possible and as resilient as possible, I supported the idea of looking into this fiber optic option. And so administration will be bringing back a report on that. Next, there was a notice of motion put forward by myself, actually, and this just had to do with policy and procedure on unbudgeted projects and proposals. I won't bore you with the whole thing right now. Basically, the motion that I'll be bringing forward next week is that council direct administration to implement a policy or procedure where unbudgeted projects or proposals will be reviewed and presented using the prevailing cost to borrow the proposed amount of money necessary for the project. And this is just as a result of, I've noticed that, if there happens to be some money left over from a project, that money, that we might use that money for some other project, let's say, but at the same time, we might be, borrowing money to pay for other projects that, we have going on. And to me, it makes sense that, we could take that surplus money from those other projects, and rather than, just kind of putting it at a new project that we didn't even plan for, we could be using it to borrow less money, and that will save us the cost of interest that we have to pay on that. And so the idea is basically that we should at the very least price in the cost of interest in these unbudgeted proposals, so that we have, I believe, a more accurate or true idea of what the actual cost of using that money is. Because as I said, we could reduce the amount of money we borrow with that money, the surplus money, and and that'll give council a more accurate view of the actual cost, and then we'll actually. It should change, I guess, how certain projects look to council as far as feasibility, and return on investment, essentially. And so that'll be coming back at the April 7th meeting. Next, we had a presentation from Mr. Chuck Proctor, and this had to do with just the land use bylaw for the Lakewood duplexes. And so that was, as I mentioned before, well, I guess I mentioned it at a previous meeting, but this just had to do with the Lakewood development wanting to rezone some of their properties so that they could build duplexes rather than, like let's say some single family housing, for instance. This did pass the 2 final readings necessary to move this bylaw forward. I supported it. I supported it because I believe that the developer probably they have a good idea of what will sell their product and what will bring people into the community, and as long as they aren't doing something where like my concern, I guess, would be that if tax revenues are projected to fall based on a change that's being proposed, then I would want that to be taken into account as far as like whether or not the area will still be able to cover the cost of the services that the town is providing, so that other areas of town aren't subsidizing the services in those areas due to changes that the developer might be making. Next, we had a bylaw number 21-13, which was a land use bylaw amendment to allow for the addition of home occupation use in the R3 district. This is something that I brought forward as a result of being contacted by a member of the community. Basically, the idea behind it is that currently, if you have a home occupation, and that could be just doing somebody's nails, it could be maybe somebody giving somebody a massage, that type of like kind of low activity, low impact type business. Currently, they're not allowed to operate in an R3 zoned property. And R3 could range. I mean, there's even single family houses that are located. They're old houses that are located on R3, but it's usually something like, let's say, a duplex, or it could be even a bit higher density than that. It could be fourplex, sixplex, or a condo building or something like that. And as long as they are not negatively impacting the people around them, then it's something that we should probably consider allowing, just to help like improve the strength and diversity of our economy in town here. And so that did pass first reading, and then council also scheduled a public hearing for April 21st on this issue. So if you'd like to provide your feedback on that, please feel free to contact the town of Strathmore. Next, we had the prohibited business bylaw item come forward, and there was a motion made to move that to the April committee of the whole meeting, so that'll be, I believe, April 14th. And this is just in response to some of the feedback that we got, to allow council to suggest amendments, and then to basically just make sure that the bylaw is improved if it needs improvement, and to make sure that it's going to be doing what we want, and then also hopefully not doing what we don't want. As I mentioned, a lot of times there can be unintended consequences that can come from actions of government, and so it's prudent to, or it behooves us to ensure that we are trying to reduce unintended consequences as much as possible. And so this will be coming back, as I mentioned, in April, and then moving forward from there. After that, we had, again, Mr. Paul Salvatore give a presentation about the Parks and Pathways bylaw. So that's bylaw number 21-06. And this just had to do with, there were some amendments that needed to be made to kind of tie it into that stormwater or use of storm ponds policy. And then also there was something that I made a suggestion for an amendment as well, which had to do with just the use of pathways. So currently, or I guess previously, the rule was that so you could not be in a park between midnight and 5 a.m. And there's obviously some probably good reasons for that, say like to prevent vandalism and other types of issues like that. But an issue that I noticed was that under the definitions of a park, there was pathways included in that, and essentially what that did was that made it so that you couldn't walk on a pathway anywhere in town between midnight and 5 a.m. And obviously that that's kind of a silly rule to have. It prevents people from being able to walk around town at certain times of the day, and so that was included, and then that did pass all three readings this evening as well, so that will be amended. Following that, we had another presentation about the Municipal Solid Waste Services Bylaw from Ethan Wilson, and this just had to do with, let's see here. So basically what this bylaw has to do with is just kind of to put some parameters around the waste management service in town. So whether it has to do with like what you can put in the bins, the time of day you have to put your bins out, where you can store your bins, just all those rules basically surrounding the garbage pickup in town here. I asked for that to be deferred. Again, like there was kind of a bit of an issue with the amount of time that was being taken up for the meeting due to the other issues that we talked about. But then also there was a number of what I felt were kind of arbitrary rules or arbitrary kind of measures in there that I felt should be discussed and maybe reviewed to be changed. And then there was also a few kind of like there was some kind of clauses that were duplicated or very similar that probably should have been looked at. And then there was even a conflicting clause in there that I felt should be reviewed. So that will be brought back to a committee of the whole meeting in the future for more discussion. And then after that we had first reading for bylaw number 21-07, which has to do with offsite levies. So offsite levies are basically a fee or a tax that allows the town to complete projects which allow for development to continue to occur without requiring taxes to be raised on existing residents. Levies are imposed on undeveloped lands to fund projects and upgrades to the town's infrastructure which are directly required due to growth. Levies are imposed in most municipalities for water, sewer, stormwater, and transportation. Recently, the government of Alberta has allowed for levies on recreation and protective services projects as well, and this is currently being evaluated but is not included in this bylaw. Offsite levies, they can be a good thing because, it's a way to basically extract money from, a particular development. So I gave the example earlier of the Lakewood development. Basically what would happen is, so the town puts, and the town already has these offsite levies, but they're looking at, trying to increase those. And basically what would happen is, as a developer brings new land on to be developed, there would be, a certain amount of money per hectare that would be paid. And then, as it's going through the building process, per lot, there's a certain amount of money that would be paid as well based on like this per hectare cost. It's, as I said, it's not a bad idea to have offsite levies, to help pay for, specific costs. We just have to be mindful of, what other municipalities are charging developers to operate in their communities, because there is the possibility that by putting too high of fees on, it basically just kind of causes people to overlook building or buying a home in Strathmore as a result. And one of the ways that Strathmore or most municipalities increase their tax revenues is by the sale and development of new properties. And so, as part of, trying to balance, the existing costs we have, or, pay for those costs, and then we need basically new development to happen. So we're trying to, basically balance the cost of infrastructure plus the basically, the weight that we're putting on these new developments as they happen. And so that will be coming back, with some public consultation in the near future. And so you can look for that in the near future as well. That was essentially the end of the meeting. Actually, no, I should mention, so Councillor Sobel, he made a motion with regards to writing a letter to the province, to, officials with the province, asking them to look at prioritizing firefighters for COVID vaccines. And an interesting point, I guess, that, is there was a question asked about why firefighters as opposed to say dentists or other frontline workers, and a good point that was made was that we can potentially do without a dentist, whereas if COVID gets into the fire department, that can have a really disastrous effect if part of the fire department or most of the fire department is kind of at home sick essentially, and then we're unable to respond to various disasters or other issues that the fire department might need to respond to. So council did support sending this letter to the province and to officials with the province, and so that will be happening soon. And that essentially was the end of the meeting. We went right up to 10:30 with the meeting. Our next meeting is, as I mentioned, April 7th. We might have a special council meeting in between now and then, but our next regular council meeting will be April 7th at 7 p.m. And so you can look for that. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can contact me at jason.montgomery@strathmore.ca or on my phone number, which I'll put right here. And again, yeah, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please reach out to me and I will do what I can to address those or to help resolve those. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great day and a great rest of your week.